Recently, I flew to Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia, and took a wonderful trip to Lake Bled. I remember a famous mountaineer was asked in a TV interview, why did he climb Mount Everest? And his reply was, because it was there. And that's why I went to Slovenia, because it was there. I wanted to see for myself what Slovenia, and particularly Lake Bled and this beautiful little island, which I'd heard so much about, I wanted to see what it looked like when photographed by me. So I flew out there for a couple of days and photographed it. The images that I'm showing you were taken very early morning as I strolled around the lake. And the water in the lake is much warmer than the air temperature. So what you see is this rising mist. The images in the morning with the mist were taken over a 2-hour period, and you can see how the light and the whole appearance of the island and the unique church on the island, how the image changed over that 2-hour period in time. The mist lifted, the sun rose and cast its light on the church. And it was an absolutely fascinating experience to see the colors change, the light change, and the whole mood and the emotion of the place changed. I went back later that day, just before sunset, to capture the little island once again and the church, and to see what it looked in the evening light. And as I've said to you before, the best time to photograph is 2 hours after sunup or 2 hours before sundown. And there is, just after the sun has set, that wonderful 10-minute period, that wonderful time when the light and the emotion and the mood is just shatteringly beautiful. Other pictures in the Slovenia section are of an old house, a deserted house that I came across, and also a lovely chapel on a hillside with the mountains in the background, which I thought was just beautiful. I waited for the light to come on the church, and then the lights in the distant little towns, they came on as well, making it one of those magical moments that makes your heart skip a beat. I've talked about those before. Those are moments that, as I talk about it now, the actual emotion of the moment comes flooding back to me. A couple of the images you might find of some interest, the technique I used. On one of the images of water flowing down a gully, I waited for the sun to highlight parts of the rock and used a slower shutter speed to make the water a little bit blurred. I thought this gave it a more dynamic feeling to just water flowing down the gully or the gorge. I also used some ICM, or intentional camera movement, in some of the images I took in a wood, and it gives it a sort of painterly effect. It almost looks like an artist has dabbed paint onto the picture. Also, I did some multiple images, and one of the images of some trees was a 5 exposure image layered on top of each other in the camera. I used a Canon EOS 5D Mark III to take these images, and I hope you like them. Well, the tips I would always give for a photographer are sometimes the interesting things are happening behind you. Yes, Lake Bled was exciting to photograph, but I also found the deserted house, which was quite close nearby. I also found that a great challenge and some great moments of joy and beauty within that old derelict building. It was rather nice. I took a long time to photograph that staircase, an old deserted staircase with a door at the bottom of it. And the question was, do you have the door open or do you have the door closed? I think a door partly open leads the viewer into the house, up the staircase, and then when they come down the staircase again, it leads them into another room. One thing that I would say to all you photographers out there is that probably the hardest thing is to get out there and start doing something. I know the man who recently cycled all the way around the earth, I think it took him about 70 or 80 days to do it. I'm sure one of the hardest parts was actually taking the first 100 yards, you know, setting off, saying goodbye and doing all that. And that's probably the most difficult thing for me is setting off, getting myself ready and doing it. But you know, there's so much. If you look around you, probably within half a mile of where you live, there are some fascinating people and some fascinating sights. It doesn't have to be landscape. It can be cityscape. It can be a trip, a walk down a river bank, a walk to the end of your garden. Recently, I saw a wonderful exhibition based on somebody's back garden. They just photographed the changing seasons in their own garden and what it looked like. And it was a really amazing exhibition. It's a wonderful world out there. And you don't have to travel 1,000 miles. It's usually 1,000 paces and you'll find the best photographs. Best of luck.